Kakadosh Boker Or Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Samechvav Amud Aleph 66a1. We're going to start by the two dots on Samechei Amud Bet 65b. The two dots where it says Hau Gavre Zabin Le'ara Lechavre. There was a person that he sold a field to his friend Shelo B'Achrayut. And what happened is that Chazia De'Hava Ka'atziv. So he saw that the seller, he was very, very upset. So Elmaleh, so he comes and he tells him, Amai tzivta, why are you so upset? He says, even if it's going to be that they're going to take it away, you don't have to worry about it. Why? They're going to pay from Idit. You're going to have to take from the best of the properties. And even the shevach, even the appreciation of that which it goes up, you're also going to take it away. So what are you all upset about? Yeah, why? Because at the end of the day, he's going to be mekabel. He's going to be mekabel achrayut. Yeah. So he comes and he says, Amar Meimar comes and he says, Pitume mila be'almahu. He says, what you just said are milim be'alma. Milim be'alma. They're like stam tanchumim. It's not really a real words, right? Why? He says, you're not saying the truth. And that's why you're not going to be chayav in achrayut. So he comes down and he says, as far so again, this is a story, right, that was actually brought down because at the end of the day, it was done without achrayut. So he comes down and he says like this. So Elmaleh Ravashi Lameiman says Ravashi to a Meiman. And he says like this. He says, Tama Mai. What's the reasoning he said this? Given the lokeach baila tnuye, vehacha mocher kamatni. The lokeach is the one that has to make the condition that it has to be done with achrayut. Because this tonight is first best. But here, it's the mocher that's doing it. So Marta, that's what you said, Pitu mile be'almahu. So that's what you just said, Stam. You're just giving words, but you're not mitkaven be'emet to come and to obligate yourself in the guarantee. You're just saying, like calm down, basically. Like, what? Don't worry about it. Everything will be good. So he says, but the brighter the taught, that when you're going to have money, right, then you have to give it back. I'll give it back to you, mutar. The mocher who again, it has to be the mocher that's making this condition. That basically, when he has the money, he wants to give it back, and then he wants to get back his property. But again, it's going to be for his good. Mocher lo atni, right? Velokeach kamatni. So he says, however, though the mocher did not make such a condition, it was the lokeach. So according to your svara, it comes out, right, that these words are just some, again, the same thing. Pitu memile. And you're not obligated to come and to fulfill your obligation, to fulfill this condition. So he said, what's the difference? What's the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa, right? Where we're talking about that the Mocher does it, it's going to be Asur Mishum Ribit. And if the Lokeach does it, it's going to be Mutar Mishum Ribit. What's the difference between them? Why in one case is it going to be permitted, and one case it's going to be prohibited?
What is going to be permitted?
The acceptance of the. So Amar Rava comes and he says like this. Seifa de Amar lemidate. In the Seifa, we're talking about where the Lokeach, right, said, the Lokeach is the purchaser, right? He only did it mirtzono umidato, meaning that he did it from his own free will. And therefore, there's no real obligation to do so. The sale was already a good sale. And therefore, there's no Isur Ribit. Because it's like, I have no obligation to do so. So I'm just giving it in. I'm saying, okay, fine. Here it is. So he says, and therefore, right, Ta'ama, and therefore it's mashma, that the reason is only because it's midateh. Halo amar le-midateh, but if he didn't say it from his own will, right, which means that he's chayav lekayem zeh, and velo amrinan, and we're not going to say pitume mila be'almahu. We're not going to say that it was just stam pitume mile. Pitume mile is like the fattening of the words, by the way. Right? Lefatem is when you usually come and you take a cow and you want to fatten it up. You call it pitum, lefaten. So here, we're doing it with words. So according to him, he's saying since the lokeach was the one that made the condition, not the seller, it was the purchaser, it's worthless. It's not worth anything. Because it was the meaning it was the wrong guy that's giving the guarantee. That's what it is. That's in essence what we're talking about over here. Okay? So Amaleh. So now Ameimar comes and he tells Rabashi, Naasa keman de Amaleh midate itman. So it comes out of the words of Rava is that when it's going to be the lokeach, which is the purchaser, which is saying it, it's considered kilu, he's saying it on his own, because since he was the one that did it and not the seller, it's pitume mile. And even though he didn't explain it that way, right? So it's ki'ilu, it was going to be explained. Okay? That's what he's saying. And therefore, we're not going to obligate him to say which basically just means that it's, I wouldn't call it a bluff because it's but it's basically, it's like worthless. It's like I'm telling you, yeah, you have a guarantee, but it's not a real guarantee. It's ki'ilu, I'm telling you that, but you really can't obligate me to my word. That's what's really saying. Okay? So, fine. Now the Gemara says, Ha'u shachiv mera de katav lagita ledvitu. It was a shachiv mera. He comes, he writes a get to his wife. Now, obviously, why did he write a get to the wife? In order that she doesn't have to do yibum or chalitza. Right? Because if not, the guy's on his deathbed. What does he care now that she's going to be divorced? But she didn't have children or whatever, and he didn't want. They should have... I will. So what happens now is like this. He didn't write down that it's going to be a get on condition, but rather he wrote down that it's a get stam. Right? So what happens? So it comes out that even if he becomes healthy, right, she's still going to be divorced. So therefore, during the time of the giving over the get, ingid vitnach, he started wailing. Right? Why? Because he was upset that he didn't write it on condition. Amra Leah, she told him, Amai kamitzach, why are you sighing? Why are you so upset about? Ikayamt, right? Didachana. If you're gonna get up from your sickness, so I'm yours, right? And that's it. Amar Rav Zvid, says Rav Zvid, these are just some words. What does that mean? Let me explain one more time. Right? What happened is that he comes and he got married to somebody 20 years younger than him. Right? And what happens is that younger than him, sorry. And what happens is that she doesn't want to go and do yibum or chalitza. So what happens is that he comes and he says, you know what? He writes a get. Now, in the olden days, he used to write gets on tanai. What does it mean on tanai? On condition. Nowadays, we don't do it because it's very, very complicated. So therefore, even for certain dayanut programs, they skip out all the halachot of tanai. All the halachot of conditions. Why? We don't do on conditions nowadays. So here, he could have done it, but he didn't do it. He did not do it on condition. So therefore, he gave her a get, and now the second that he gives her the get, Kaddish, that's it. That means even if he gets up from his deathbed, right? She's a free woman. She goes scot-free. She could get married to whoever she wants, and then that's it. So what happens is he comes, he's giving her the get, and all of a sudden he starts sighing. So she tells him, why are you sighing? He says, if you get up from your bed, I'm yours. Now, is that real? Meaning we could actually obligate her to her words? The answer is no. So that's called pitume mile de alma. It's like a nonsense. Why? Because, okay, you're doing it to console him, but it's a good consolation. But that's it. But you can't obligate her. Meaning she could come, and even if he gets up and he lives for another 10 years, she gets married to the next door neighbor, and he's suffering away. And there's nothing what to do. Yeah, why? Because that's the way it is. So that's what Rav Zvid says. Rav Zvid says, pitume mile be'almahu. It's ustam words. So Amaleh Ravacha midifti leRavina. Says Ravacha.
So basically what happens is he's on his deathbed. He needs to know.
Says the Gemara. So what did we just say? We said, Vilav pitume mile mai. So he says, what would be the din if it's not going to be just stam pitume mile? Bedidakaim al-mishtetana begita. At the end of the day, right? He says, what? Do you think that it's dependent upon her to put a tanai in the get? Bedidakaim al-mishtetana. He's the one that has to put the tanai in the get, not the woman. Meaning, a woman gets divorced against her will. At least this was before Rabbeinu Gershom, obviously. After Rabbeinu Gershom, so then it has to be with her will, meaning it has to be with her consent, right? Even though Sfaradim, it's not that simple. Vadia Paskins, that's still lechatchila, we still do it, but if not, then we could do it against her will. But fine, but again, there's a meaning mitzad the halacha, or mitzad before the halacha, mitzad the Torah, a woman needs consent to get married, but not to get divorced. Meaning a woman cannot get married against her will. You cannot come to a woman and say, and she's screaming at you, I don't want to marry you, and you just force the ring on her finger, you're married to me. Doesn't exist. A woman needs consent to get married. Kiddushin, and that's why we do so many things to make sure that you have her consent. You come and you tell the ring is worthless, it's worth a penny. Are you still happy? Yes. Okay. Why? But she's going to say afterwards, no, I thought the ring was $1 million and then it was only $1,000. I don't want to get married. We don't want those things. So therefore, we do many things in the chuppah to show that she's 100% in agreement with a marriage. Let's do the marriage. To do the divorce, it's against her will. A person could come and say, "Arezo gitech," jump up and down 20 times, but this is your divorce bill. This is your get. There's nothing what to talk about. But that was before Rabbeinu Gershom came on. So here he says, since it's the husband that can get divorced to the woman against her will, so therefore, what happens is, it says over here, he has to put the condition, not her. He's the one that's putting the condition, not her. So says the Gemara, I would have thought to say, Hu gufe adaita dida kagamin ve'gita. I would have thought to say, you know what? The only reason why he gave the get was because of her words. Meaning she was ki'ilu megale data, that she put the condition ki'ilu. She was the one that said, no, I'm yours as long as you get up. So ki'ilu, he says, okay, so I'm going to give you the get, because I know that you're still mine. And all of a sudden, the guy gets up from his deathbed, and she already ran off with what's his name? John Doe. Yeah? So it's a big problem. So he says, Kamashmalan comes to teach you that no, that it's pitul mile. It's nothing. At the end of the day, we don't even pay attention. Okay, next, two dots.
What are we not paying attention to?
The two dots says, Hilvau al Sadehu. If a person comes and he makes a loan, and he says, if you're going to give me from now until 3 years, it's going to be mine. So this is what it is. Yeah? So he comes and he says this. Amar Ravuna, well, the Gemara is going to explain the Mishnah. We're talking about the Sadeh, that the field was worth more than the loan. And even so, the Malve comes and he says, is that if he doesn't pay it back on the time, and the Gemara is going to bring an entire machloket on this case. So let's see the Gemara. Amar Ravuna comes and he says, Beshat matan ma'ot, if it's during the time of the Beshat al-Va'ah, and at the end he didn't pay back the right? Lo para lo alove, he didn't pay back. So then Kanal Malve Hakol. So the Malve comes and he acquires everything. Right? So he says, La'achar matamel, but if it was going to be done after the giving over of the money.
The lender acquired everything.
Which one?
The lender Malve.
No, the Malve is the lender. The lender. What did I say? Yes, the Malve. The Malve is the one that acquires everything, the lender. Okay, now he says, La'achar matamel, but if it's going to be after giving over of the money, lo kana lekenei me'ota. So he's only going to acquire the field according to the value of the loan, meaning according to how much he lent out, but not everything. Okay? Now, therefore, even if the guy didn't pay back, he's not going to be zoche in the entire field. He's only going to be zoche in the amount, which was the loan. Rav Nachman says, no. Even after the money, right, it was made this condition, right? Kanakol, he still acquires everything. So it comes out, it's going to be a machloka between Rav Rahman and Rav Huna. Does the lender acquire the entire field or only keneged ma'otav? Now again, this machloket is only la'achar matan ma'ot. La'achar matan ma'ot means after the loan was done. Because if it was during the time of the loan, according to everybody, right? He comes and he says, according to everybody, he's going to acquire it. Yeah? Fine. So now there's going to be a story. Yeah? What's the story? Avad Rav Nachman uvda kaberesh galuta kishmateh. So Rav Nachman came and he did a case exactly like the Bedin of the Resh Galuta, which means he did halakha l'maaseh, that it was after Matar Ma'ot, meaning it was after the giving of the money, and that he's going to acquire the field according to Shita. And then afterwards, the story came in front of Rav Yehuda. V'kareh Rav Yehuda l'ishtareh. So Rav Yehuda came and he tore the document, which was mizakeh to the Malvedes field. Because according to him, he's not going, it's worthless. It's nothing. So Elmaleh Resh Kaluta says that
One question. For what purpose was this?
comes now and he says like this. He says, so Elmaleh Resh Kaluta says the Resh Kaluta to Rav Nachman, Rav Yehuda karal ishtarech. You know that Rav Yehuda, he came and he tore, right? He tore your document. You know that. Yeah, the shtar is the document. So you tore the document. Elmaleh, he says, Dardeka kareh. He says what? A small child came and he tore up the document. Gavra Rabba kareh. Wasn't a small child. It was a big person. Yehuda's a dam gadol. He's a great person. Chaza betama vekareh. He saw something, he saw a reason to tear it, and that's why he tore it. So Ika Damne, the reason why Elmaleh, he told him, right? So some people say that he told him, Dardeka kareh. He says the kule alma legabe didi bedina darde keninu. So basically, it's two different ways of actually learning up the words of Rav Nachman. Look at that. Rav Nachman came and he said a statement, and this statement, you have two ways how to learn the statement. The first way to learn the statement was he said it like a question. Dardeka kare, what? A child tore up the document? He said he's a big governor rabbi. He's an incredible big rabbi. He obviously saw a reason, and that's why he tore it up. Meaning, don't think that it was torn up for no reason. There was a reason there. It could be that we don't know the reason, but he saw something, and that's why he tore it up.
Sorry, who's saying that a child tore it?
Rav Nachman said. Rav Nachman said, right, that a child tore it up. But the question, the first explanation is that he said it as a question. He said, what? A child tore up the document? It wasn't a child. It was a great rabbi. And therefore, obviously, he saw a reason to tear it up, and he didn't. The second ikadamne, meaning the other version was the exact opposite. He was saying it benichuta. How do you say benichuta? I mean, he was saying it as a statement. He says, Dardeka kareh. It's a yeled katan came and he tore it up. Meaning, what do I care? Imagine right now a child comes and he tears up a document. You think I care? It's a child. What do I care? He says, why? Because kule alma legabe didi bedina dardekeninu. Because everybody in dine mamonot to Rav Nachman was considered like children. So therefore, according to the first one, Rav Nachman was actually coming and saying, listen, obviously Rav Yehuda is a great person, so even though you tore up your document, there had to be a reason for it, even if we don't know the reason. According to the second one, it was, what? A child is going to come and he's going to tear up the document? Okay, fine. No, a child tore it up. Now, why did he say that? Because everybody, Rav Nachman was always like Rav Nachman Bedine. He was like the biggest of the Dayanim. And because of that, everybody for him was like children. You understand? It was children's play. So he went and he said it. Now, again, obviously, he was telling it to him in such a form that, here it says it in the footnote. Rav Nachman was an expert in Dinei Mamonot, as is brought down in Sanhedrin. He was called the Mumche, right, Rabbin. And therefore, because of that, the halacha is always like him, right, in Dinei Mamonot, as is brought down in Masechet Ketubot as well. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, Hadar Rav Nachman. Then Rav Nachman came and he said, Afilu b'shat matan ma'ot, even it's going to be b'shat matan ma'ot, lo kana velo klum. You get nothing. So it comes out that Rav Nachman comes and he does a 360, a complete turnaround. Remember, one more time. What did we say before? We said before, b'shat matan ma'ot, if the condition was done at the time of the loan, according to everybody, he acquires everything. If it's going to be la'achar matan ma'ot, if it's going to be after the giving over of the money, samachloket, Rav Huna and Rav Nachman. According to Rav Nachman, you acquire everything. And according to Rav Huna, it's only going to be kerege ma'otav. Correct? Which means according to your money, according to the loan, and not a penny more. All of a sudden now comes Rav Nachman, he retracts, and he does a complete circle. He says, even if it's going to be b'shat matan ma'ot, rien, plum, shum davar. You don't acquire anything. So says the Gemara, Eitvei Rava Rav Nachman, ask Rava to Rav Nachman, Im ata noten li mikan v'ad shalosh shanim harei sheli, harei shelo. He says, I don't understand you. There, it was written actually part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, if you're not going to give it to me within 3 years, it's mine. It does belong to him. So it's a Mishnah. And there it was b'shat matan ma'ot. So what are you talking about exactly? How do you make such a turn, right, that all of a sudden you change everything? What's going on over here? So Elmaleh comes and he says, I'm going to tell you, Asmach the Kanya. And Asmachta is Koneh. And Menyume says, Asmachta lo Kanya. What does this mean exactly? Right? And Asmachta is like a Havtacha. It's like a a guarantee. It's like a guarantee be'alma, to be sumech on your words.
What's that? Masechet?
That's a guarantee.
A guarantee.
Yes, which means that if you're not going to pay it back, so he comes and he says, so then what's going to happen is, right, is that I'm going to say, are you somech on it or not? But are you going to say it's part of the kinyan? So therefore, I retracted, right? And I said that even during the time of Matan Ma'ot, lo kanav lo klum. Why? Right? Because he's going to come and he's going to say, right? Now, 1 second. So now we still don't understand how does this work with the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah Mefureshet said that if it was during the time of Mishat Matan Ma'ot, during the time of giving over the money, it's his. So says the Gemara, it says 1 second. But according to Menyumen, it's a question from a Mishnah. Because in the Mishnah, it said Mefurash that the Malve is Koneh. Right? So what's going on? So he comes and he says, if you want, you could say that our Mishnah is going according to Rav Yosef, that he says a smachta kanya, and therefore, since a smachta kanya, right, and therefore that's what we're trying to say over here, lalacha, obviously posek min yume, right, like the dat of the Tanaim, which argue on Rabbi Yosef, yeah, and then he says over here, and that they hold, right, that smachta is not koneh, and therefore the malve is not going to be koneh. So basically, we're just saying that our Mishnah is not according to Menyume. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef holds a smachta kanya. So if a smachta kanya, that's why it makes sense that the malve is going to be koneh. Okay, but lalacha, we don't pass him like that, right? Samech vav mubet 66b. By Tamar, if you want, you could answer the Elmaleh that he tells him keneh me'achshav, right? I want you to acquire it from now. What does that mean? If I'm not going to give you the money from now until 3 years, you bought it retroactively. So since you said the words me'achshav from now, it's not an asmachta anymore. It's a kinyan gamur. It's 100% a kinyan that he actually sold it to him from now. And therefore, because of that, that's why he's saying that it's not the same thing as an asmachta. So basically, two different ways how to answer up, right? Menyume to the Mishnah. Either that the Mishnah is not going according to him and it's going according to Rabbi Yosef, that asmachta kayim, we don't pass on that. Or it's going like that it's not an asmachta because he said right now, from now. And therefore, once he said from the word from now, Kaddish said there's nothing to talk about. Fine. Another concept of masmachta. Amru lei mor yenuka mor kashisha beneder of chasta. Says mor yenuka mor kashisha. Right? The younger one and the older one. Right? The children of Rav Hasta. These were two children of Chasta that he called them like the elder one and the younger one. Okay? Now it says over here like this. He says, they said to Rav Ashi, Hachi Amri Nardai Mishmeh de Rav Nachman. This is what they said in Nardai, in the name of Rav Nachman. Haya smachta, this is smachta, bizmane kanya or belos minane lo kanya. Right? It's going to be koneh bizmana. But shelo bizmana, it's not going to be koneh. Right? What does that mean? If it came to 3 years, right, and he didn't give him the money, he acquires it. But before the 3 years, it's not going to acquire. So it all depends. Bizmano, it's going to acquire. If it's not bizmano, it's not going to acquire. Okay, during the proper time, and it's going to acquire. And if it's not the proper time, it's not going to acquire. So Amalehu, so they went and he told them, Kol mide, everything, any type of a kinyan, even if it's not an asmachta, bizmane kane, velozmane lo kane. Says, I don't understand you. What's your chidush? Any type of a kinyan. If I'm going to come and I'm going to give you a kinyan, right? So it's only when I actually do the meshicha, or I'm going to do the hagba'ah, I'm going to pull it, or I'm going to pick it up, or I'm going to, that's when it acquires. Obviously, if it's not the time, it's not going to acquire. So what does that mean? If I come in, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to buy your phone in 30 days, right? And all of a sudden I come within the 30 days and I come and I do a hagba'ah. I acquired it? Obviously not. So what is the chidush? By the way, asmachta, if it's bizmano, it's going to acquire it. Shlo bizmano, you're not going to acquire it. He says every kinyan is like that. What's a chidush? So Dilma, so they said, Hachi kamnitu, this is their kavanah. Ashkeche bego zimne ve'amar lekene kene, batar zimne, right? Ve'amar lekene lo kane. It says like this. Imagine right now, right? Remember, what was the case of the Mishnah? He had 3 years. Yeah, there was 3 years. You have to pay me within 3 years. After 3 years, I acquire it. Okay, fine. He says, maybe by man, what happens if you found him within the 3 years? And he told him, you know what? Acquire it for yourself. I'm not going to give you the money. So you just acquire it for yourself. Right? So now you're going to tell me that he actually does acquire it. But tarzmin zimne. But if it's going to be after the time of the 3 years, and he tells them now acquire it, lo kani. He's not going to acquire it anymore with a smachta. Yeah, even though he tells them acquire it. My tama, what's reasoning? Mechamat kisufa de kamaleh. Because he didn't have the kavanah, the behemet, he wanted him to acquire it. It was because he was embarrassed. Meaning like this: if I have a loan by you, I only have to pay you back after 3 years. Within the 3 years, am I embarrassed? I'm not embarrassed. Why? I still have time to pay you back. So within the 3 years, if I come and I tell you, you know what, acquire it, I don't plan on paying you back. So therefore, it means that I meant it. And therefore, you acquire it, and it's yours, 100%. Okay. What happens after the 3 years? Meaning, I went and I took a loan for 3 years. I didn't pay back. After the 3 years come, I still didn't pay back. So I come and I tell you, you know what, acquire it because I don't plan on paying you back. Says the Gemara, this is what the children of Chasta were saying. It's not a good sale. It's not a good kinyan. Says, why not? The only reason why he said that was not because he wants them to have a kinyan. He's embarrassed. He was supposed to pay back. He doesn't have the money. He didn't pay back yet. So he's embarrassed. So he said, you know what, just acquire it. And it said, but he really does not want you to acquire it. So it's not going to. That's what they said. Okay? So says the Gemara, even though it's a nice svara, velohi, but it's incorrect. Ta'afilu begozimna, even if it's within the time, nami lo kani, he doesn't acquire it. The haide comes. So why did he tell him kane? Kasavar kimate zimne lo liti litardan. Says, you know why? He didn't want him to drive him crazy when it comes to time. Meaning, this guy, he realizes he didn't know at the time. He took the loan, and he didn't realize that the guy was a nudnik. You know what a nudnik is? Yeah, the guy, he just metarter bamuach. He drives you crazy. That no matter what,
every month, right?
every he's at your doorstep every morning. He's at your thing, driving you crazy. That every time you go to the grocery, he's there waiting by you at the cashier to watch you pay. The guy's driving. So what happened? He found out. So all of a sudden, he found out, whoa, do I want that this guy is going to do this to me? So within the time, he already comes and he tells them, by the way, I'm not going to pay you back. Take the field. He didn't want him to take the field, but he just didn't want that when it comes to 3 years finishes, he doesn't want the same abuse. So what did he do? He just pushed them off. And that's so therefore he doesn't acquire as well. That's what the Gemara says. Okay. Another case. Amar Papa says, Haya smachta zimnin kanya zimnin lo kanya. Says the Papa, sometimes an asmachta does acquire and sometimes it doesn't. Ashkeche de kashati shichra kane. He says if he found the loveh that he's actually coming and he's drinking the beer, right, in the chanut, the kameapecha zuze lo kani. He says if right now, right, during the day he's drinking a beer, right, so therefore he's going to acquire it. Why? Because we see that he's not sad about it, right, and therefore for sure he wanted it to be acquired to the malveh, and therefore it does help. But if you see the kameapecha zuze that he's looking for money, he doesn't acquire. Meaning, let's look at the reaction of the borrower. That's what the Gemara says.
The borrower is taken away, which invokes that to be responsible.
Yeah, meaning we're gonna pay attention to the borrower. Is the borrower happy or is he sad? If on the day of the payment he's still running around looking for money, so obviously it means that he's sad, and therefore it's not going to be a good kinyan. But if you see that he's drinking a beer over there, so obviously it's going to be a big difference over there. Obviously, so says the Gemara, yeah, that sometimes it's going to be koneh and sometimes it's not going to be koneh. So it all depends on the reaction of the borrower. He said, no. You know why he's drinking? He's not happy. You know why he's drinking? He's trying to take away his da'agah. Meaning sometimes when people lose so much money, where do they go? They go to take a drink just to forget about all their sorrows. Right? It's not that they're jolly happy. Right? I know some people that they come, right? And they come to the Bet Knesset and they just start drinking. Why? So take away all the sorrows. So Inami, he comes and he says, or he says maybe he was maftiach to another person to pay off the debt, and therefore that's why he's not doeg, because somebody else is going to pay it off for him. So therefore, what's the problem? Ela Ravina, but rather says Ravina, he says if right now it came the time of the piraon, the time of the payment, and he's still makpid on the damim that he doesn't want to sell anything that's worth it, even though he doesn't have money to pay it back, and he needs the money. For sure, the Malva is going to acquire the field because he was already mityayesh. He already gave up hope, right, from his field. And therefore, right? Because why doesn't he come and start trying to get money and trying to sell things? Right? He gave up on his field. So Amaleh Ravacha Midifti Ravina says Ravacha Midifti Ravina Dilma Savar. Maybe he held. He says, I don't want that it should actually go cheaper, right? Because if people know that you're pressed for cash, what's the first thing that people do? They use it to their advantage. If I know that you're strapped for cash and you need cash, what happens? I drop the price because I know that you're going to take anything. So therefore, it's like showing your cards. You understand? Meaning, it's always the secret to the game is always going to be you never want to show that you're pressured to sell. I could sell another 10 years. I have no problem. The second that they know that you want to sell, Kaddish. Why? Because that means you could play whatever you want. And any price you give them, they'll take it. That's a problem. Yeah? Elmaleh of Papa, brother of Papa says, he copied the Ara Vadai Kanan. He comes and he says, if he's going to be makpid, right, that he's not going to sell any field, even that it's its value, so therefore, for sure, right, he says, even though he doesn't have money, so for sure, we're not talking about now that he's going to sell for cheaper, because then you could say, listen, he doesn't want to show the cards, he doesn't want to lose a lot of money, fine. But here, right, in the entire concept that we're talking about, right, was different halachot. Fine. Says the Gemara, V'amar of Papa, says Rav Papa, Afal Gav, even though Damar Rabbanan Masechta Lokanya, even though we said that Masechta is not going to be koneh, aputiki avya lemikba minah. He says it becomes an aputiki to collect the document, which means that if he's not going to pay it back at a certain time, right, so he cannot pay it back, right, and take the field back. Let's see what it says over here. Right, the aputiki was the mashkon, which is shibud nechasim. So he comes and he says, so therefore it's got this obligation over here, right, towards the field. So he comes and he says, it becomes like an aputiki to collect the chov. And therefore, if he's not going to pay it back, so the love can't come and start, taking other monies or things like that. So Amaleh Ravuna Be'er Rav Natan Rav Papa Mi Kamaleh Kenen Leguvaina. Says what? Did he actually tell him get this field to collect from it? He didn't tell him that. So for what do you mean that it became like a aputiki? So Amaleh Morzuta Be'er Rav Mare Leravina Ve'i Amar. But if he did say Kenen Leguvaina, Kani, he does do it. Why? So Asmachta Ubesmachta Lokanya. It's an Asmachta, and an Asmachta does not acquire anything. Keneged the Chov. El aputiki, the Kamar of Papa. So what is aputiki then? The Elmaleh that he says, Lo yelecha pirun al mizo. You designated that this is the only thing that you can take the money from. Meaning sometimes they come and they make it, I think nowadays they do it like LLCs and things like that. That means you can't run after them personally, right? So that means they want to make it in a way that, listen, this is the only thing that you could collect from. And once you could only collect from this, it's a completely different halacha. So gavra dezamin le'ara lechavre b'achriyut. It was somebody that he sold a field to his friend with achriyut. Amaleh, and he comes and he tells him, "Itarfu laminai magbili meidei idit diit lecha." If they're going to come and they're going to take it from me, so I'm going to collect from the idit sheba idit, which is yours, right? So imagine I'm going to come and I'm going to take from the house in Bal Harbor, right? I'm going to take away from you. Why? The idit sheba idit, right? Your house in Surfside. So Amaleh, he comes and he tells him, "Meidei idit lo magbit lach." He says, what are you talking about from the idit? I can't give you. Why? Because I want them by me. You could take from other idit. So they did take it from him. The end he came and he took the idit. So the Asavar of Papa thought to say idit Amaleh. He says, well, it's idit. Because I actually had idit. Now my idit is instead of the idit, which means that imagine right now the guy had a property in Surfside and he had another property in Biscayne Point. So obviously the idit was the Surfside, and then by the time he came and the guy came to collect, he already sold his house in Surfside. So then he had his house in Biscayne Point. So now the idit, which was in Biscayne Point, right? That's all that he has. That's the idit now, right? That is what it is. So now, okay, so he's got an Opaloka and he's got in other places, right? He's got in, in other places, you understand, like in Emerson or whatever it is, right? So other, but it all depends on the circumstances. So he says, but that's what happened with the prices. So Rav Bar Shaba have a masik be Rav Kahana Zuze. Rav Bar Shaba was chayav money to Rav Kahana. Elmaleh, and he told them, Ilo parani lecha liyom ploni, kave mehai chamra. If I'm not going to pay you until this day, you could collect from this wine. So he told him how much wine he's going to give him. So if Papa thought to say, when do we say Asmachta is not going to be Koneh, Hanamile Be'ara? That's only by a field. Because it's not for Lezibune. What does it mean, Lezibune? Right? It means that it's not for sale. Aval Chamra, but wine, since at the end of the day you do sell wine, so it's like money. Meaning, I understand a field because I'm going to say, listen, it wasn't a property there. Fine, I can understand. But here it's wine. Wine you sell. That's what you're doing. You're selling wine. So, Elmaleh Ravuna, the Rav Papa. This is what we said in the name of Rava. It says, Kol de'i lokani. Anytime you come and you use the word if, it's nothing. Why? Because it's not konebas, it's an asmachta. Meaning I say, okay, if this happens, so then this. No. Not if. It has to be a good condition. It has to be something, you understand? So even if it was just the wine, no, it has to be something better. So Amar of Nachman says of Nachman, Hashad Amar Rabbanan, now that the Rabbi said asmachta is not koneh, hadarada, hadar peri. You have to give back the karka, right? You have to give back the field to the loveh, and you also have to give back the fruits. Because since he was eating the fruits without permission, meaning that it wasn't supposed to, he has to pay back the fruits as well. So are you going to tell me Nachman mechila b'taul lo havya mechila? Are you going to tell me mechila b'taul is not considered mechila? By Yitman it was stated, if you're going to sell the fruits of the dekel, of the palm tree to your friend, Amar Ravuna says until they don't come into this world, you could retract. But once the fruits are in this world, and you cannot retract. Right? So therefore, even though during the time that of the kinyan, it still didn't come to the world, at the end of the day, there was no chal the kinyan. So therefore, Rav Nachman comes and he says, even if they do come into the world, you can retract. Rav Nachman says of Nachman, Modina de'i shamit ve'achirum v'kirum. Says what? He's going to say, Rav Huna, are you not modeh to me? That if right now he came and he started eating the fruits, that you can't take it away from him? Why? Because as long as he didn't actually come and retract, so he was mochel on the perot, he was mochel on the fruits. So to him, he was mochel on the fruits. This guy came and he took the field. You're right. Afterwards, you're going to come, you're going to take it away from him. But at the end of the day, it was mechila b'taut, it was mechila. So answers the Gemara, hatam zvin v'achalva. He said, no, there's a difference between a sale and a halva. When you come and you sell a field to a friend, for sure you're going to be mochel, even if it was done b'taut. So he says, why? There you can do it. Why? Because at the end of the day, it was a sale. But he says over here, we're talking about a halva. When we're talking about an halva, it's a completely different halakha. There, it's not the same thing about mechila, right?